When I was in school, my professors would tell me to draw. And being an industrial designer, that's just kind of what you do. You draw. Uh, and so I would spend, really long hours every single day trying to get the right line weight and proportion and perspective and I would draw, but I never really wondered why I drew. And I think this is really important, especially as designers, to stop every so often and question why you do something. And for me, to draw and to do the projects well, the reason was I just didn't want to have a bad critique, right? I wanted to put my sketches on the wall, and I did not want to be the worst one, and that was the reason I drew, right? Mechanically, you had to improve, obviously, and I know professors give you a lot of drawing homework so that you practice and you get that mileage. Uh, but I think really it would be a lot more effective if when you drew you had a purpose, and that's something that I didn't really come to realize until a lot later. And so I think sketching is a multiple tools, and I think designers very often mistaken it for something that it isn't, or mistake the tools within themselves. And so, as an example, when I was a senior, I had a thesis, and it was to make this stool, right? And I remember I would draw, and my professor would be like, "We need 10 pages or 10 concepts," and I would spend hours on this, absolute hours, just look at this drawing, right? Like shading and line weight and making sure the perspective is right. And I would go so slow and try and get the ellipses right. And this one, like, they're not even right. Like, it's bumpy and all of that. And the thing is, I would spend so long on these drawings that I think at the stage, I kind of hurt it. I hurt myself. Um, what you're supposed to do is, in at least at this phase for me, was ideate, and I wasn't really ideating because this is one of the pages. This is one of the drawings that I would do, and this one would take me about 25-30 minutes, right? Because you want to make sure that the lines are straight. So I was using a ruler and then shading and using markers so that there'd be a little bit of tone, and then perspective. And if it was wrong, I would start over, and it would take me forever to do these drawings, and I'm supposed to be ideating. Uh, and so what ended up happening is you can't. I was having one idea every 30 minutes. And when you do that, you kind of go against the flow of what creativity could be, right? And I think that's one of the distinctions that designers have to make as sketchers. It's one is sketching isn't necessarily your art, right? You're a designer, and sketching is a tool, and it can be multiple tools. But your end deliverable, like end of the phases when you give the project over, is not sketches to the client, right? Sketches are just a way for you to visualize an idea. And you know how they say that a picture's worth 1,000 words? You have the tool to draw that picture. And I think that's where a lot of the power in sketching should be. And you can get to these refined sketches later, but if you don't have an idea yet, it's okay to do this. It's okay to doodle. It's okay to consider what that up and down line would be, and other architectures, and try to explore what's going on. And then you can start refining, and you can start narrowing down a form. And that's when you can ultimately start getting into those visualizing sketches that are a lot more effective for clients, right? But you got to make sure that the tool of sketching you're using for yourself as well, and you're using for the final product. And a lot of thing with school is, they'll give you an assignment to draw a couple pages, but you're drawing for the sake of finishing the assignment. You're drawing for the sake of having your work on the wall and not being the worst one, or being the best one, right? If you're ambitious. And that's not necessarily the point. Sketching is a tool, and you should use it as a tool, and it's not the final deliverable, and there's always process and improvement to it. And in this page, it's explore, like, if there's little perfs on the side, or if it's rectangular, or you have a circle and this side dips and this side goes up, and maybe it's one piece. And then you can start to ask, and you can start to explore and study the form in your head, and what would it look like looking at it from above, and what's it look like from the front head on, and from the side, and if you blow it up. And when you start getting really comfortable with perspective and with just sketching, right? You're not proving anything to anyone. You're just trying to understand your own form. You're trying to understand what's in your head, and you're trying to put it down on paper, and that'll make jumping to the next step really easy, right? Once you've drawn your product in all of these different angles, and you've started to really understand the nuances of the curves and the proportion, when you jump into CAD or you jump into model making or prototyping, any of these steps, it becomes very natural and it becomes very easy because you've already been there, right? You've already done and used this form, and in your head it's there and you understand it, just like you study for a test, right? When you're sketching, you're studying a form or exploring a form, right? That's a lot of what this is. And the big takeaway is sketching is multiple tools, right? In this instance, it's exploring a form that's in your head. And that's why there's all these different perspectives from the top and from the bottom and sides. And these are similar but a little different. And that's just trying to understand, I'm looking at it from this new view. What would that look like? It's ideating and using ideation as a tool. And these little doodles, right? They took me 3 seconds, 4 seconds. And so in the time that it took me to make this, I finished this whole page, right? And that's not to say this is bad, because then I can show a client something like this, right? And they can visualize it. But that's the thing. Sketching is multiple tools, and it really depends on how you use it. But the biggest question is, why are you doing it, right? If you're doing it to do a presentable something, do it like this. If you're sketching for an idea to construct an architecture, do it like this, right? Like, just think of, like in this one, it was how to get air through a system. And so it wasn't really wondering, like, making sure that my line weights were right. It's just making sure that the idea that I have in my head is visualized as well as I can, or to just spark a train of thought, right? Use sketching like that. Don't sketch for a deliverable. Don't sketch for a due date, because I think you'll lose a lot of the point.